Okay, so you should have already done your readings, done the assigned videos, done the concepts and content questions. Before you move on to the applications and analysis, I just wanted to take a few minutes to sort of pull together what you've read. So not there's not a lot of new material here, but giving you some examples, making sure that we really understand, because this is the first week, and this is all about what economics is and what the point of this class is, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we move forward into the rest of the 8 weeks. So the punchline, as you have learned, is that resources are scarce. Because resources are scarce, there's a cost to everything. You give up something, the opportunity cost, what you give up in order to do something. It may be money. You may be giving up dollars worth of other goods and services. So if I spend $20 to put gas in my car, I'm giving up whatever else that $20 could have bought. But I could also be giving up things that it's not just monetary cost. It could be that I'm spending time. It could be that I am going to get a free Ben and Jerry's ice cream cone. Like they have that, like once a year they do that free ice cream cone thing. I was somewhere once with the girls and they're like, oh, it's free ice cream cones. Can we go? And I'm like, okay, let's go. And we go, and the line's all the way out the door and down the block and around the corner. And I'm like, this ice cream cone is not free, right? The price is zero. I don't have to give up any dollars worth of other goods and services for it, but I am giving up a lot of my time. It would have taken over an hour to stand in that line to get the free ice cream cone. The zero price ice cream cone, but not zero cost ice cream cone. And so as long as your resources, doesn't have to be a dollar cost, any resource, your time resource, any resource that has value in another use, if you're using it this way, you're giving something up. So because resources are scarce, because resources, your money, your time, whatever, have value in their next best use, there's going to be a cost. Not just price. Price is the money that you hand to people. Even if the price is zero, there could be a positive cost if you're giving up something else of value. And so rational economic agents, this is the punchline to all of economics. Economics, as we learned, is about behavior. It's about people making decisions. It's about choices. People take action, and we use this term specifically in economics. When we say rational, this is what we mean. People taking action as long as the benefits are greater than the costs. And this is what people do. This is what our models of economic behavior are built on. It's not really a question, do they do this? It's saying, this is how people behave. This is how consumers behave. This is how producers behave. This is how governments behave. This is how, politicians behave. This is how people behave. That's the punchline. That's it. That's economics. The rest of it is just filling in the details. And so, how do we measure the benefits? How do we measure the cost? How can we change the benefits? How do we change the cost? What does our model of behavior tell us will happen if we change the benefits and the cost? If we change the benefits, we change the cost, we can change people's behavior. Or if something happens, it's going to change people's decisions. And so that's what economics is. It's using this model, this framework, to analyze behavior and seeing how changes can cause changes in people's behavior. Consumers' behavior, producers' behavior, everyone's doing the same thing. This is the punchline. Everything else is in the details. And so for consumers, like I said, the cost is what you're giving up: money, time, anything of value. The benefit, again, this isn't necessarily monetary. The benefit is just what it's worth to you, how much you value it. There's a word we use in economics that I don't think was actually in your reading, but you might come across it somewhere, and I use it. It's kind of a fuzzy word. It's utility. Utility is, it's not really measurable, but it's the idea of the happiness, the satisfaction, the well-being you get from doing something or consuming something, taking an action. And so you're going to take an action as long as the value to you of taking that action, however you measure it, is greater than the cost to you, what you're giving up. And so the value to you could be, you might give away a lot of your money because you get a very high value from helping people and using your resources to help people that are less fortunate. So it's not irrational to give away most of your money if the value to you of giving away your money is more than what the cost to you, what you're giving up, not just your money, the things you could buy, but any other sort of non-monetary, even psychic cost. And so I really want to emphasize that when we talk about benefits and costs, we're not just talking about monetary things here. We're talking about what it's worth to you and what you have to give up for it. For producers, it is a lot more straightforward, because for most producers, it's just, their benefits are pretty much just the revenue they get, the money they get from selling things, and they compare it to the costs of doing it, which are typically monetary costs, the amount that they're paying for their resources. But it looks different. What producers are doing looks different than what consumers are doing, but everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's weighing their benefits, weighing their costs, and they're taking action as long as the benefit of additional action is greater than the cost of additional action. And a lot of times those benefits or those costs, can be monetary, but it's really important to understand not just the Ben and Jerry's level, but if you think about back in the 90s, this was a good example, the Presidio in San Francisco was a decommissioned Army base, and a lot of people said it should be turned into a public park because it would be costless, besides some signage and hiring park rangers. But the government already owned the land, so there was no cost, it was argued, to turn it into a park. And I was having this discussion with somebody at happy hour once, actually, and they were saying it should be a park because there's no cost. And I said, well, we could sell that land. And they said, no, we shouldn't sell. You can't even say that. You can't say the cost is what we could sell the land for, but it is, right? What's the next best use of, and if you don't know the Presidio, it's in San Francisco, gorgeous stretch of land right there by the Golden Gate Bridge, on the water, all of that. So I have no idea what it could sell for, so I'm just going to say 100 million because that's an easy number. But we could sell that land to a developer to make, luxury hotels and condominiums and things like that. And let's say we could sell it for $100 million. That is the cost. We're giving up, even though we own the land, we don't have to pay $100 million for it. But by not selling it, we're giving up $100 million. And that's a positive economic statement. And you should have read about in this year, you're reading the difference between positive economics and normative economics. Positive statements are statements of fact or testable hypotheses. If we do this, then this is going to happen. If there's a drought in Florida and there's a lot fewer oranges, the price of oranges is going to rise. That's a testable economic hypothesis. Normative statements are statements of value. Things like fair, unfair, good or bad, what we should do or what we shouldn't do. That depends on your values. That depends on how you feel about things. So I'm not here to teach you values. I'm not here to teach you how to feel about things. What we're here for the next 8 weeks is to understand the economic model, the model of decision making, understand how to measure benefits and costs, understand using our models how changes in benefits and costs can change behaviors and change outcomes in the market. So back to the Presidio example, that person, the positive economics is fact. You can't argue with that. You're entitled to your own values. You are not entitled to your own facts in this class or elsewhere. So yeah, if we use the Presidio as a park, we're giving up $100 million that we could sell that land for. And we could do stuff with that $100 million. We could build schools. There's so many things we could do with $100 million. So we are, in fact, giving up $100 million. That is a statement of fact. And that has to be understood. Even though it's a non-zero, it's a zero price, we don't have to pay anything for the land, there is this huge cost to using it. Now, whether we should or shouldn't, whether the Presidio should be a public park or we should sell it, that depends on your evaluation of the benefits. So saying, I don't care if it costs $100 million, I don't care if we're giving up $100 million, it's still worth it. It's still worth it that we need to have that to be open space for the people. That is a normative economic statement and a perfectly valid one. But another perfectly valid normative economic statement would be that $100 million could do so much better things elsewhere, and so we should sell it, and so because we could the stuff we could use with the benefits we would get of that $100 million and the things we could do with it are greater. That's also a perfectly valid normative statement. So there's no right answer to questions that are normative. And I'm not here to teach you right answers or ask you for right answers to normative questions. But what we are here to do is to talk about the positive economics and how we can use our economic toolkit and our tools of economic analysis and our understanding of these concepts to make positive economic statements, to say, if we do this, then we can expect this. And then it's up to you or anyone to say, and given that, I think we should do this, or given that, I think this is good, or this is bad. So we can measure, if we raise minimum wage, what's going to happen to unemployment. If we raise minimum wage, unemployment will go up. That's a testable economic hypothesis. Turns out it typically doesn't happen with small increases in wage, but we'll talk about that. But that's a statement of fact, or a positive economic statement. If we do this, what will happen? A normative statement would be, well, we should raise minimum wage because it's only fair if you're working full-time. You should make near the poverty line. Or a normative economic statement would be, we shouldn't even have a minimum wage because if people are willing to work for something that people are willing to pay, it doesn't matter what that price is. It's not the government's job to tell people. That's a normative position. And so I just want to make that part clear about what we are doing here and what we aren't doing here. What we are doing here is understanding more about economic models and the tools of economic analysis, so that when you're faced with these things, you can make sure that you're really evaluating the benefits and the costs fully and appropriately, and understanding how changing benefits and costs change behavior. And then you can use that information to make your own normative statements that are based on sound economic logic and reasoning. Instead of saying there is no $100 million cost because you don't want to acknowledge it, just say, yes, there is this cost, but I think it's worth it. That's a valid economic point. And so that's the basics of what we're going to be doing. There's one more sort of important point and terminology thing that I want to make sure that we have a handle on, because it's a term we use all the time. When we say people take action as long as the benefits are greater than the costs, what we mean is moving forward from this point on, if we take this action, if we consume this good, if we do this thing, what is it going to add to our benefits and what is it going to add to our costs? And you should have seen this word in your readings. Marginal, or the concept that people take action or make decisions on the margin. You don't say, am I going to study for this test, or am I just not going to study at all? Well, most of us don't do it that way. You say, what's the benefit to studying one more hour or another 15-minute increment? What's the cost? And you're going to keep studying as long as the benefit of additional studying is greater than the cost of additional studying. You might get to a point where the cost of additional studying, what you're giving up, sleep, time with your family, things like that, again, non-monetary costs, but definitely things of value, you're going to come to a point where the cost of additional time studying is going to be less than the added benefit. You'll know most of the stuff. Spending more time on your work is less valuable than what you're giving up. And so that's when we say we're taking action on the margin. Whenever you see that word marginal, think small incremental change, additional. Marginal, additional. A decision on the margin meaning when you're doing an additional unit, when you're consuming an additional unit, taking additional unit of action. From a producer's perspective, the marginal benefit of producing one more unit and the marginal cost of producing and selling one more unit. And so that's something that marginal concept is. So when you're making a decision, it doesn't matter if there are costs that you've incurred. There's a term we use in economics. Just want to make this point. Just write it down here. This concept of sunk costs. Sunk costs are costs that you've already incurred, and no matter what you do, you can't get them back. So moving forward, it's not going to change anything. like if you bought a shirt and you spent a lot of money on it and you really liked it when you bought it, but you brought it home, washed it, took the tags off, can't return it. You wore it and you just didn't like it. So you put it in your closet and then it's hanging there mocking you, saying, you spent a lot of money on me, you better wear me. And moving forward, and you think, if I wear this shirt, there's a cost. I just feel yucky. There's really no benefit and there is a cost. I shouldn't wear the shirt. The benefit does not outweigh the cost. I should not wear this shirt. But then part of you saying, I spent a lot of money for that shirt. I better wear it because I spent a lot of money for it. What you spent on that shirt is a sunk cost. You're not getting that money back whether you wear the shirt or not. So you think, if I wear the shirt, how does my benefit change? How do my costs change? What is the change in my benefits of that additional wearing of the shirt? What is the change in my cost? What you paid for the shirt is not relevant at all. That doesn't matter. But a lot of times it is hard for us to ignore those costs. So I just want you to keep that in mind and always just think about what is going to change in the benefits, what's going to change in the costs. What is that marginal if we take additional action? And so that's the fundamentals of what economics is. And as I said, the rest is just kind of filling in the details.